Hello there. Tonight we are going to take a slow, shivery walk into the bone-deep cold of Edwardian England, where waking up in winter wasn't a gentle stretch and a yawn, it was a tactical decision. The air inside your bedroom is so cold you can see your breath curling like ghost smoke above the pillow. You're not even outside yet. And your nose, it's gone. Replaced by an icicle. The fire's out. The chamber pot might be frozen. The dog is smarter than you and hasn't moved from the hearth all night. Somewhere in the street below, a milkman coughs hard enough to chip a tooth. You probably won't survive this. But statistically, neither did everyone else. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. And drop your city and local time in the comments. I love seeing who else is up too late with cold toes and a warm phone screen. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. You lie in bed and stare at the ceiling beams, debating whether moving is worth the trauma. Your blankets are wool coarse, heavy, and slightly damp because nothing dries properly in winter. Your nightshirt smells like coal dust and old soap. You shift and the sheets crackle. They're not just cold, they feel insulted that you dared return. The first act of courage in an Edwardian winter isn't going outside. It's lifting the covers. Your toes touch the floor and recoil like you stepped on a snake made of frozen iron. You fumble for your slippers, thin cloth things that haven't felt warm since November. The chamber pot beneath your bed is half full, and when you pick it up, you realize it's frozen. There's a small, grotesque sculpture forming inside equal parts bodily shame and weather report. The walls are thick brick, but there's no insulation. Not unless you count the 2 layers of wallpaper and the painting your aunt gave you, which is slightly tilted because the wall is damp and warping. The air in the room is still and sharp. The window panes have grown their own lace frost feathers that look almost artistic if you weren't busy wondering whether you'd actually left the window open or if winter just picked the lock. Downstairs there's a hearth. It's probably cold too. But it's something. You grab your shawl and wrap it around your shoulders like armor. You're not dressed yet, you're not even fully awake. But you've declared war in the morning, and that's half the battle. Down the stairs now, each step creaking like an old bone. Your breath fogs in the hallway. Not dramatically. Just enough to make you feel like you're sleepwalking through a ghost story. You open the kitchen door and immediately regret it. The room is colder than outside. The sink has a thin sheet of ice. The kettle's been sitting on the cold stove since last night, and when you pick it up, it whispers a sarcastic little clink of resignation. You check the grate. Ashes. A few half-burnt bits of coal. You blow into your hands, which does absolutely nothing except make your nose run. You find the firewood, bless it silently, and begin coaxing a flame into the hearth like it's a reluctant child. It's not a dramatic moment, just flint old paper kindling, but it feels biblical. The strike, the spark, the tiny flicker of hope that might mean the difference between freezing and almost freezing. When the fire catches, it's like breathing again. A subtle shift in the air, a whisper of heat that promises more. You crouch in front of it, holding your hands out. The warmth doesn't reach yet, but you pretend. Pretending is a major survival skill here. The cat arrives smug and well insulated and takes the best spot. You let her. You're not proud. She deserves it. She probably didn't let the fire die. You drink yesterday's tea reheated and slightly metallic. It's not delicious, but it's hot. The first mouthful stings not because it's too warm, but because your teeth are half frozen. They'll recover. Maybe. Now comes the dressing. You peel off your nightshirt and stand in the cold like a sacrifice. Each layer goes on with practice speed chemise drawers, flannel, petticoat, wool, petticoat, skirt, bodice, shawl stockings, 2 pairs, then boots. Everything is stiff, slightly damp, and has that unique Edwardian scent, a blend of mutton fat smoke and quiet resignation. For men it's worse. Long johns that never quite fit. Waistcoat buttons that snap off with cold fingers. ties that must be knotted properly even when your hands don't bend. One historian claimed Edwardian dressing was ritualistic. He's not wrong. But he also never had to button his shirt with frostbite. As you lace your boots, you remember the newspaper lining from yesterday. Still there. A bit soggy but better than nothing. You pull your scarf tight and slip on your gloves. One has a hole in the thumb you've decided to ignore until it spreads. Outside the window, the street begins to stir. A cart rattles by, wheels groaning on the stone. The sky is a flat white. Not snowy. Just undecided. Maybe it'll flurry later. Maybe it'll just sigh. You blow gently on the fire before you leave. It winks at you, holding the warmth like a secret. You'll need it again tonight. Outside, the air hits you like a slap. You breathe in and feel your nose try to close. Your ears regret everything. The wind slides through your scarf and taps you on the spine like a debt collector. Still you walk, because this is Edwardian winter, and surviving it. That's just how the day begins. The street greets you with a slap not of welcome, but of frost-laced indifference. You step out into Edwardian London, and the cold sinks into your coat like it's been waiting for you specifically. The cobbles are slick with a thin film of ice that glistens like sugar but acts like soap. The sky hasn't committed to snow yet, but it's flirting with the idea. Everything is grey except the smoke, which is somehow greyer. Your boots scuff through slush. Not romantic snow. No, this is the kind of urban winter mess that's been stepped in by 17 people, chewed by horse hooves and flavored with just enough manure to make you wish you had a mask. Your breath floats ahead of you, like a ghost curling in the bitter morning air. It's only 7 a.m., and already you feel like you've lived a day and a half. Across the street, a constable trudges along his thick cape, snapping in the wind like a disappointed parent. His mustache is rimmed with frost. He tips his helmet slightly in your direction. The universal Edwardian acknowledgement of suffering the nod, you return it silently, agreeing that yes, we are both alive for now. A match girl walks past you, her fingers bare, clutching a bundle of goods no one wants to buy. Her shawl is more whole than thread. She looks like she's walking through the motions of being human. You want to say something kind, but your jaw's gone numb and kindness doesn't stop wine chill. The houses on your block, small brick soldiers lined up like tired sentries, each have their own chimney. Some smoke steadily proud plumes of deep black coal smoke that smell expensive. Others stutter out thin, anxious trails of burned paper and desperation. You could map the class system by what's burning coal for the rich old furniture and floorboards for the poor, sometimes literally. You pass a lane where the air tastes like wet cardboard and burnt rags. It's survival not style. Gas lamps flicker, struggling to stay lit against the wind. They don't provide much light in the daylight hours, but they give the illusion that the city is trying. That someone somewhere cares whether you can see where you're going as you slip on the next icy flagstone. You approach the corner bakery, and for a moment, just a moment, you feel warmth. Not actual heat, but the scent of it. Bread, yeast and crust, and something sweet. You linger by the door, pretending to look at the display. It's Christmas season, so they've lined the shelves with cakes you can't afford, and decorations that look like they were made in the dark by someone bitter about raisins. You breathe in again. The warmth doesn't reach your bones, but it gives your imagination something to do. A delivery boy brushes past you, balancing a tray of bread on his head like it's nothing. His ears are bright red, and he's only wearing one glove. The other hand is wrapped in what looks like the sleeve of an old coat. You nod to him. He doesn't nod back. He's too focused on not falling. Priorities. A horse-drawn cart lumbers past, its wheels coated in thick slush that it happily throws up against your calves. Your stockings are now soggy in an artistic splatter of grit and horse-related uncertainty. You don't flinch. You don't curse. This is London in winter. The city gives no warnings and expects you to just keep walking. You pass a woman sweeping her stoop with a bundle of twigs tied together with string. She's bundled in layers of wool and resentment. She spits on the stone to see if it'll melt the frost. It doesn't. She swears quietly and keeps sweeping. A newspaper boy shouts something about unrest in the Balkans, but his voice is swallowed by the wind. His nose is running, his scarf is unraveling. He's in shorts. Shorts in this weather. Historians still debate whether Edwardian people were actually colder than we are today, or if it's just that they didn't know what insulation was. Some claim the era experienced a lingering mini ice age. Others say it's simply what happens when you design cities like wind tunnels and forget to invent wool that doesn't itch. At the next corner, a chimney sweep, no older than 12, leans against a wall, coughing into his sleeve. Soot smudges half his face, and you wonder if he's more carbon than boy at this point. He offers you a weak smile. You return it. That's all you have. An omnibus rumbles by. The horse's breath streams out like smoke from dragons. The passengers on the top deck sit huddled, faces wrapped, shoulders tight, boots braced against the iron railings. You make eye contact with one of them, a man in a bowler hat whose mustache has frozen into a curled frown. He looks miserable. It's a bonding moment, and now the city is waking up. Shopkeepers fumble with keys, breath puffing in bursts. A butcher yells at a cart boy who's dropped a box of sausages into the slush. A woman in a coat too fine for this neighborhood strides through her heels, clicking a rhythm of contempt. Children dart around her legs, laughing and shrieking as they pelt each other with snowballs that may or may not contain ice, or rocks, or secrets. You step into the road to avoid them and nearly slip into a puddle that looks shallow but probably isn't. In Edwardian London, puddles lie. They hide secrets, usually unpleasant ones. You reach your destination, a shop or a doorway or a workplace that smells like cold wood and cold tea, and you stop for a breath. Not to rest, but to remember you're still moving, still alive, still here. The street behind you churns on wheels, boots, shouts, soot breath, a million little acts of survival, some graceful, most not. And all of it, every frozen cobblestone and scarf-wrapped face hums with the quiet, stubborn rhythm of a city too cold to care and too alive to quit. Cold doesn't smell like comfort. Not really. It smells like scorched earth and throat-tight dust, like something that shouldn't be indoors but absolutely must be. And in Edwardian, London coal smoke is everywhere. It's how you know the city is alive and how you know the rich are richer and the poor are burning their furniture. You can trace wealth by your nose. On the well-heeled streets, the smoke is deep and even clean-burning Welsh coal bought in bulk, delivered by cart or shoveled neatly into scuttles by someone else's hands. It floats up in generous plumes from chimneys capped with care and lined to prevent backdrafts. It's not pleasant, but it's respectable. Down a few blocks, things change. The smoke is thinner, choppier. It smells like desperation, like burned rags and splintered chairs, and whatever was too broken to keep, but too valuable to waste. The chimneys cough instead of hum. The soot sticks in the air longer, clinging to your clothes, your eyelashes, your lungs. You walk through these invisible borders from one scent to another. You pass a family huddled around a crate they're burning behind a butcher shop, feeding in strips of crate wood like they're sacred. One man has layered 3 coats, none of them buttoned, all of them stolen from different decades. A woman hands a child a biscuit so dry it crumbles before it reaches his mouth. They don't look up at you. They don't need to. That's another thing about Edwardian winters. No one makes eye contact in the cold. It feels too intimate, too dangerous. Like if you acknowledge someone else's suffering, your own might get worse. You keep walking. Historians still debate whether Edwardian winters were actually colder than ours or just more deadly because of housing. Some claim London's old brick terraces trapped dampness like tombs and radiate cold in every direction. Others argue it's all down to insulation or the total lack of it. But most agree on one thing: being poor in winter was less a season and more a siege. Inside the homes of the wealthy, things look different. There are coal fires burning behind ornate grates tended by servants in quiet routines. The kindling is dry. The ash is swept away before it can settle. Gloves are pre-warmed sheets aired beside the hearth before bedtime. You'd think it was charming if it weren't so casually unshared. Upper-class families have entire rituals built around staying warm. A maid lights the drawing room fire before breakfast. Another brings hot water bottles upstairs wrapped in flannel and tied with ribbon. The lady of the house wears a quilted tea gown trimmed with fur, looking like a well-upholstered armchair. She sips chocolate while the world freezes outside. Meanwhile, a few streets over, someone wraps their feet in newspaper because their shoes leak. Someone else wraps a scarf over their child's face so tightly they can't speak, just breathe out little puffs against the wool. The house they live in has a fireplace too, technically, but it's cracked, or boarded up, or the chimney was never lined right and now smoke curls into the room and settles like a low fog across the ceiling, and the coal, if there is any, is damp, bought in small sacks handed over with coins wrapped in handkerchiefs. It hisses in the grate like it's mocking you. Some burn peat, some steal coke from factory trains. Some barter for cinders from their better-off neighbors, sweeping up the ash from another family's fire and trying to resurrect it. There's a woman in your neighborhood who sells bundles of firewood from a wheelbarrow, thin twigs mostly, nothing substantial, but she arranges them carefully, ties them with string, and calls them kindling bouquets. You've bought one before, not because they worked well, but because you wanted to feel like you were buying something civilized. Inside your own home, the fire is everything. It is the hearth and the heart. You watch it with the focus of someone tending a small god. You feed it scraps. You whisper encouragement. You move the chair closer than you should and feel your shins sting with heat while your back stays frozen. There's no balance, only rotation, and you've learned tricks. You bank the fire at night, covering it in ash so it burns low and slow like a sleeper with just enough breath to make it to morning. You boil bricks in a pot and wrap them in rags for bed. You drape heavy curtains across doorways, trapping heat like it's a fugitive, and you ration. Coal becomes a form of math, this much in the morning, this much to cook dinner, a little extra if someone's ill, a little less if payday's delayed. You think in shovels and scuttles, in ounces of warmth. Some days you wake to find the fire's gone out completely. The grate is dark and cold and filled with the sad remains of yesterday. You scrape out the ash with numb fingers, trying not to cry, because tears just make your face colder. You try to coax it back. You fail. You sit and wait for the world to thaw enough to start over. The coalman is late. The sack is smaller this week. The price has gone up. You overhear someone in the queue say the mines are behind. Someone else blames the weather. A third mutters something about strikes. No one knows. Everyone fears. And then there are the little horrors. Chimney fires, gas leaks, drafts so strong they make candles lean sideways. A neighbor once stuffed rags in the chimney to stop the cold and ended up smoking out half the block. Someone else fell asleep too close to the hearth and woke up with their blanket on fire. That's the thing about heat in this world, it's necessary, but it's never safe. Even the soot is out to get you. It clings to everything. Curtains clothing lungs, children develop a cough by November and don't stop until May. You keep wiping the windows and they keep fogging over. You draw little faces in the condensation just to remember what smiling looks like. You dream about warmth. Not the fire you have, but the fire you want. One that doesn't need tending, that doesn't threaten you, that doesn't come with the price of blackened ceilings and breathless nights. You imagine a world with pipes in the wall, with switches and radiators and something called insulation. But that's fantasy. Here, the only switch you have is between too close and too far from the fire, and the only insulation is what you can wear. So you wear everything, and still the cold lingers. But the smoke curls up into the sky, joining the hundreds of other chimney trails that rise like tired prayers from the city below. Each one says the same thing: we are still here. We are still trying. And that in Edwardian London is what passes for warmth. You start with a shiver before you've even opened the wardrobe. Not from the air, though, that's bad enough, but from knowing what you have to put on. Getting dressed in Edwardian winter isn't fashion. It's engineering, it's architecture, it's misery disguised in buttons. Your wardrobe, such as it is, creaks like a haunted house when you open it. Inside, a few shirts, a skirt, or two a coat that weighs more than your landlord, and a suspicious pile of wool that might once have been a petticoat or might be a semi-domesticated animal. Everything smells like coal smoke and damp like the scent of winter itself trying to cling to fabric. You start with a base layer, a chemise or shift that feels cold as a handshake with death. You tell yourself it's only the first few seconds that are awful. You're lying. It stays awful. You tug it down, teeth clenched, body flinching at the fabric's cold embrace. If you're lucky, it's cotton. If not, it's linen with the texture of sandpaper dipped in ice. Next, drawers. Yes, split drawers. Practical in theory, still cold in reality. The fabric bunches in weird places and the waistband is either too loose or too tight. There is no in-between. Stockings come after that, the wool kind that itch in summer and shrink in winter. You tug them up, slowly stretching them over legs that haven't felt truly warm since September. Now come the real layers. Petticoats. Multiple. One flannel, one wool, maybe even a quilted one if the wind is howling. You don't care how you look. You care about not losing sensation in your knees. You reach for your bodice, stiff and severe, buttoning it with fingers that fumble like they've forgotten how hands work. The buttons are tiny. The holes are stubborn. You mumble curses under your breath like spells against hypothermia. Then the corset. Oh, the corset. You breathe in. You tighten the laces. You regret everything. You try again. There's a moment when your ribs push back like nope, but you've done this before. You win, but only barely. You can't breathe deeply now. That's fine. Who needs oxygen when you're freezing? Historians still debate how much harm corsets actually caused. Some argue they were less dangerous than people think. Others point to organ displacement, fainting spells, and women passing out during prayer. Either way, in winter, the real crime is how hard they make it to layer properly. You add another bodice, maybe a blouse with long sleeves and a high collar that chafes your neck just so. Then your skirt, heavy wool with pleats that swing like a bell when you walk. It makes a satisfying noise like you're your own orchestra of survival. Now the coat. It's less of a garment and more of a declaration. It swallows you whole. It has buttons up to your chin and cuffs that hide your hands. You wrestle it on shoulders hunched, muttering encouragement like you're suiting up for battle. A scarf, a hat, gloves, all mismatched, all slightly damp. You don't care. Style is for people who aren't actively fighting off frostbite. You glance in the mirror and see a walking mound of wool like someone tried to upholster a ghost. The hat's crooked, the scarf is fraying, the gloves have a hole at the thumb, and the boots. Oh, the boots. You slide your feet in slowly, carefully. The leather is stiff from yesterday's frost and the laces are more theoretical than functional. You say a quick prayer that the soles won't leak today. Yesterday's walk home turned your socks into puddles. If you're a man, the process is no kinder. Long johns long, itchy and eternally damp go on first. Then a shirt with a collar so sharp it could cut glass. A waistcoat with buttons too small, and a coat so thick you could sink in a canal and not feel it. Hats are required, scarf optional, frostbite not. If you're a child, you're doomed. Your parents bundle you up until your arms stick straight out and your legs wobble like toothpicks in porridge. Scarves go around your face until you resemble a poorly wrapped sandwich. Movement is restricted. Joy is theoretical. Your mittens are attached with string, but you lose one anyway. It's tradition. And still somehow you're cold. That's the magic trick of Edwardian winter. No matter how many layers you add, the cold always finds its way in. Through the seams, through the gaps, through the betrayal of damp wool pressed against skin. You shuffle through the house like a medieval knight in a borrowed suit of itchy armor. Turning your head requires effort. Bending over requires permission. You try not to drop anything because picking it up means undoing 3 layers of dignity. And yet, for all the misery, there's a strange pride to it. You've made yourself into something heat-resistant. You've cobbled together armor from mismatched donations, hand-me-downs, and frayed fabric pulled from a basket older than your landlord. It's not pretty, it's not elegant, but it's yours. Of course, if you're rich, your coat is fur-lined. Your gloves are made of kid leather, silk-lined, monogrammed, and probably still warm from your valet's hands. Your hat is trimmed in velvet. Your muff contains a heated brick wrapped in fox fur and the ghost of aristocratic superiority. You, on the other hand, might have a potato in your muff. Not even a joke. A hot potato wrapped in cloth is a legitimate Edwardian hand warmer. It works. Until you get hungry. Some people wore bricks. Others heated flat irons and slid them into fabric sleeves. One woman in your building swears by warmed jars of soup, hold it on the walk, drink it for lunch. That's not a meal, that's a life hack. And here's your offbeat historical detail. For today, some Edwardians wore fur-lined underwear, actual rabbit fur stitched into drawers. Yes, it was itchy. Yes, it made you sweat. Yes, it was considered a luxury. No, it did not solve anything. There were also debates, real debates, about whether keeping warm was weakening the British character. Some physicians argued that cold built moral fibre, that being comfortable encouraged laziness and sin. These people had fireplaces in every room, of course. You finish dressing puffing like you've climbed the mountain. Your arms don't quite bend, your legs squeak, but you're upright, you're prepared, you're ridiculous. Outside the window, the frost is thick on the glass. A bird hops along the sill, looks at you like it's disappointed, and flies off. You tighten your scarf. You wiggle your toes. You prepare to face the wind. You're not warm, but you're not dead. That's the line. In Edwardian winter, dressing isn't vanity, it's a survival strategy, a woolen negotiation between discomfort and dignity. And you, dear listener, are now officially overqualified for a position as a human casserole. The door closed behind you with a groan, and you're outside again. Your commute begins not a brisk stroll, not a whimsical walk, but a battle. A daily march through frozen puddles, slippery cobbles, and wind that seems to have a grudge against your face. You don't live far from work. Nobody really does. In Edwardian London, the average person walks nearly everywhere, unless of course you're wealthy enough to have a carriage or lucky enough to catch a tram that isn't stuck behind a horse that's slipped on ice. Public transportation is possible but not reliable, and in this weather, not warm. So you walk, your boots hit the pavement with the wet schlop of soaked leather on half-frozen stone. The laces are already uncooperative. Your socks are already damp. A few more steps and the moisture creeps up like it's got a grudge crawling between your toes with the speed and malice of cold ink. You pass a baker's window glowing with the heat of early ovens. For a moment you pretend you're going inside. You imagine warm air, warm hands, warm bread. You imagine butter that doesn't chip, but you keep walking. You're not late, not yet, but you will be if you stop to chase dreams. A carriage rattles past, wheels hissing through slush. The driver hunches in a greatcoat face, stiff with frost rain, stiff in gloved fists. The horses snort clouds of steam rising from their flared nostrils like dragons who've lost their spark. Their hooves clatter across the cobbles with terrifying grace. You've seen one go down before, legs folding like a broken stool, and it's not a memory that fades quickly. You pass a row of houses, each with a doorstep scrubbed and stoic. A woman sweeps with a broom made of bundled twigs. She spits on a patch of ice to see if it will melt. It doesn't. She shrugs and moves on. A chimney sweep is already working black, with soot face like a shadow. He leans against the building and coughs. That kind of cough. The hollow one. You look away. Everyone does. Not because they don't care, but because caring won't fix his lungs. You nearly slip on a frozen puddle, flailing just enough to look ridiculous, but not enough to fall. You mutter under your breath. The ice doesn't care. A pigeon laughs. You move on. The city smells like coal and manure and onions and desperation. Not unpleasant, just familiar. The sense of a place trying to survive its own winter. Horse droppings freeze to the street like forgotten sculpture. You step around them automatically. The frozen ones are easier to avoid. The slushy ones are unpredictable. Historians still debate whether Edwardian city planners gave any real thought to winter infrastructure. Some say they adapted well, others say they simply suffered better. Either way, the result is the same: you stepping delicately through a frozen obstacle course while trying not to drop your lunch pail. An omnibus slows beside you. The top deck passengers are hunched in layers, fingers red, noses raw. One man tries to light a cigarette, but the wind snatches the flame before it can catch. He gives up with a sigh that steams into the air like surrender. A boy offers to scrape the ice off your boot for a penny. He's got a bundle of rags and a face so red it looks painted. You decline. Not because you don't need it, but because your coins are already rationed for coal. He nods and moves on. Your fingers start to ache. Not from contact, just from existing. You flex them inside your gloves and feel that strange hollow sting that means circulation is a suggestion, not a guarantee. You blow into them, but the breath comes back as a curl of fog that adds nothing. You glance at the sky. Still grey. London grey. Unchanged. Unchanging. A colour that feels like a shrug. Snow might fall later, or rain, or sleet, or something new. The forecast in Edwardian times consists of worse than yesterday and unseasonably damp. You pass a lamplighter in the distance, already finishing his route. His pole swings in practice rhythm, and he whistles something tuneless but oddly reassuring. His gloves are fingerless, his coat is stitched and patched and holding on by willpower alone. A man you don't know tips his hat as you cross the street. You nod. These exchanges aren't about friendship. They're about mutual recognition. Yes, I see you. Yes, we're both still alive. Yes, this city is trying to kill us with elegance. Your workplace comes into view, perhaps a draper's shop, perhaps a factory, perhaps a tiny office that smells of damp paper and fading dreams. The steps are slick. The doorknob is colder than truth. You fumble with the key, breathing hard, not from exertion, from holding it all in, the fear of slipping, of being late, of being seen. You enter and the cold follows you like a guest. The inside isn't warmer, it just doesn't have wind. That's the only improvement. You remove your coat but leave your scarf on. You rub your hands together hoping friction will replace fire. It doesn't. The manager nods at you without looking. His mustache has icicles. So does yours. You take your place behind the counter or at the desk or by the loom. Your breath curls in front of you like a question. And still, the day hasn't really started. Because in Edwardian winter, just getting to work is the prelude, the actual labor that comes next. But for now, you made it. You walked, you froze, you didn't fall, you kept going. And that, in this city, is enough to count as victory. The shop is dark and still when you arrive, except for the faintest smear of grey light leaking through the frosted window panes. Your breath clouds the air like a ghost that's followed you in. The fire hasn't been lit yet. The stove is cold. Everything is cold. Even the dust on the shelves feels brittle. You shrug off your coat and it thuds to the hook like a wet rug. Your scarf, damp and stiff, dangles with the defeated air of a flag after a long battle. You wiggle your fingers inside your gloves to keep the blood flowing, but it's a losing game. The first customer won't be here for another half hour, or maybe not at all today if the snow starts again. But you're expected to stand ready, upright, polite, presentable. You walk behind the counter and stare at the register. It stares back, unhelpful. A layer of condensation on the glass display cases has turned everything inside into foggy shapes, lace collars, handkerchiefs, small gloves, all blurring like half-remembered dreams. You tug your sleeves down over your hands and flex your toes. Your socks are still wet from the walk. One boot has already started to dry near the hem from the faint warmth of your body, leaving a damp ring that makes you feel like you're standing in a puddle even when you're not. Behind you, the storeroom door creaks open and your manager steps in. He doesn't say hello. He never does. He mutters something about the pipes freezing again and disappears to check the back. You listen for the hiss of gas or the rattle of metal, but mostly you just hear him swearing softly in rhythm with dripping water. The doorbell jingles a weak, apologetic sound, and your first customer arrives. A woman wrapped in furs, cheeks red from the wind voice, clipped and cool as she requests something tasteful for my niece, but not vulgar and no lace this time. Her gloves are clean. Her boots are dry. She smells faintly of violets. You guide her to the right cabinet finger, stiff as you lift the lid. She doesn't notice, or if she does, she pretends not to. That's the game. Pretend the cold isn't touching you. Pretend you're immune. Pretend your teeth aren't chattering every time you stop talking. Edwardian shops were rarely heated. Some had a coal stove in the corner, more ceremonial than functional. Most relied on proximity to the backroom kitchen fire, which rarely helped. The idea was that customers wouldn't stay long enough to mind. But you, the clerk, the assistant, you stood in it, lived in it, shivered politely in it, and still you're expected to look composed. No rubbing your hands, no stomping your feet, certainly no warming your fingers over the stove, unless expressly permitted, which it won't be. There's pride in suffering here. A stoic charm in looking slightly frozen, but never admitting it. You sell the woman a muff. She asks if it's real fur. You say yes, you're not entirely sure. She pays in shillings, and her change is so cold it burns your palm for a moment before vanishing into the till. The bell jingles again. She leaves. You're alone once more. You walk to the back where the kettle is. It's not for you, but you pretend you're checking it for the manager. You hover your hands over the stovetop cold and glance around. No one's watching. You press your palms flat against the surface just in case some heat has lingered from yesterday's fire. It hasn't. The metal is like touching snow wrapped in iron. You whisper a single word of profanity under your breath and return to your place. The day continues this way, slow and repetitive, each hour measured not in sales, but in the creeping loss of feeling in your feet. You shuffle in place. You bend and stretch under the guise of straightening shelves. You flex your jaw to stop your teeth from chattering. It becomes a sort of silent dance, the choreography of pretending you're fine. Historians still debate how working conditions in Edwardian shops compared to factories or domestic service. Some say the retail staff had it better indoors, upright, lightly laborious. Others point out the sheer mental toll of stillness. You weren't moving. You weren't sweating. You were just cold, slowly, permanently, with a polite smile stitched across your face. At lunchtime, you eat standing, a piece of bread, a bit of cheese, nothing warm. The back room is no better. The air tastes like yesterday's soup and damp plaster. Someone's hung a coat near the kettle again, hoping it will dry. It won't. You sit for 3 minutes, maybe 5. Then you're up again because sitting too long makes it harder to start again. Your legs rebel, your knees complain, your spine makes threats. By the afternoon, the light outside turns from grey to yellow-grey, a sign that sunset is coming even though it feels like the sun never really rose in the first place. You light a few gas lamps to brighten the front of the shop. They hiss softly, flickering as if afraid of the cold too. Customers drift in. A man looking for a cravat. A woman returning a pair of gloves unsuitable for church. Each one a reminder that you are not allowed to sit, not allowed to warm up, not allowed to exist outside of the performance. By 5 p.m., your hands are a curious shade of blue-gray. Your nose has stopped running because it's decided to freeze instead. You try not to lean too close to the counter glass lest your breath fog it again. You dream of fire, not metaphorically. Just fire, heat, flame, the kind that doesn't flicker out after 10 minutes or come with a lecture from management. You think about your hearth at home, probably gone out by now. You'll need to rebuild it from ash. You'll kneel in front of it with frozen hands and coax it back to life like a dying bird. The bell rings one last time. A final customer. A final transaction. The till closes with a reluctant clink. You say good evening through lips that don't bend properly anymore. The shop is closed, but your day isn't over. You still have to walk home. In the cold. In the dark. With socks that never dried and fingers that no longer feel like yours. You pull on your coat, you tug on your gloves, you wrap your scarf around your mouth like a secret. And out you go, because in Edwardian winter, even inside isn't warm. It's just less cold. Back out into the evening, where the cold greets you like a punchline that's been waiting all day. It's darker now, of course. Not just the absence of sun, kind of dark, but the thick, smoky Edwardian kind that turns lampposts into islands and shadows into walls. The cold has deepened. It's not biting anymore, it's chewing. Your boots are stiff at the ankle. The leather has frozen into a shape that no longer resembles your feet. Each step feels like walking on curved slate. The slush has turned crusty, crisp on top, wet underneath, a traitor in every direction. You pick your path carefully. You pass a lamplighter, finishing his rounds, the final hiss of gas, sputtering to life like a reluctant star. His hands are bare, his expression unreadable beneath the scarf and the wind-burned skin. He doesn't look at you. He just lowers the pole and moves to the next one, a routine practiced in frost. Around the corner, you pass a man scraping ashes onto the street trying to melt the ice in front of his doorway. It won't help much, just enough to make you think it's safe until your foot slides sideways like a rug yanked from beneath you. You catch yourself. Barely. You don't speak, you don't swear. The cold has already stolen your voice and given you nothing in return. Down the alley, a woman dumps the chamber pot. Steam rises, you don't look, it's not polite. And anyway, you've done the same. You keep walking. The fire at home will be out. Of course it will. Nothing stays burning while you're away. The embers banked under ash are a gamble. Maybe you buried them right, maybe not. You hold the key in your gloved hand like a talisman. Your coal pile is smaller than it should be. You noticed that this morning? Just enough for tonight? Maybe. Inside, you don't take your coat off right away. You stand near the hearth, kneeling down, slowly pulling the poker from its hook. You prod the ash gently. A whisper of warmth answers. Not enough to feel, but enough to try. You feed it twigs, scraps of paper. A curled up page from last week's paper, half a story about a royal engagement, half a smear of yesterday's jam. You don't care. You just want flame. It catches. You sit back on your heels and close your eyes. The fire talks. Crackles softly like it's waking up from a nap it wasn't supposed to take. You add coal carefully. 2 lumps, maybe 3. You watch them blacken, hiss, then bloom into red. You don't waste time. You place a kettle on top of the grate and stretch your hands toward the iron. It's not hot yet, but you act like it is. The performance of comfort is almost as good as the real thing. You strip off your gloves. Your fingers are pale and blotchy, but they move. That's something. You flex them in front of the fire, twisting them like slow vines toward warmth. You remember what sensation used to feel like, and then the ritual begins. Because keeping warm in an Edwardian home isn't one act, it's a sequence, a strategy. You close the doors. Every single one. You hang a blanket over the entry to the hallway. Yes, the hallway inside your own house. You tuck rags under the windows. You close the curtains thick and heavy and probably mildewed, but still good at trapping heat. You think about the wallpaper. Some people say it helps insulate. Others say it just gives frost a canvas. Either way, yours is peeling. You light a lamp. It doesn't give heat, not really, but the light makes you feel less like a relic in a tomb. The flames flicker against the walls and the shadows dance like they're mocking your shivers. You check the coal scuttle. Half full, maybe a quarter. You pretend it's more. The coalman comes twice a week if he's not delayed. If the road isn't iced, if he hasn't run out, if you can still afford it. Historians still argue about how essential coal was to Edwardian domestic life. Was it purely survival, or was it identity? Some say it was the backbone of warmth and industry. Others see it as the choking ghost of an era obsessed with fire. You don't care. You just want your kettle to boil before midnight. You sit down near the fire, wrapping a shawl over your shoulders. You sip weak tea with too much sugar and not enough flavor. It's hot. That's what matters. The mug warms your hands like a soft handshake. The cat arrives. Of course she does. She always finds the warmest spot. She curls in a ball on the hearthrug and doesn't move. You envy her instincts. You put your feet on a brick warmed from the fire. You feel the heat seep through your socks like kindness. It lasts 3 minutes. maybe 4. You eat dinner if you can call it that. Bread and dripping, cold potatoes, soup that tasted better yesterday. Everything cooked over this fire, everything rationed by what it cost in heat. You wrap your knees in another blanket and lean forward, elbows on your thighs, chin in your hands, staring at the flames. You watch the coal glow the red, spreading like a heartbeat. The sound is hypnotic. The tick of settling metal, the crack of wood, the occasional pop of something wet that shouldn't have burned but did anyway. You could stay here all night, but upstairs it's colder. Your bed waits. Icy sheets. Blankets layered like sediment. A hot brick wrapped in a sock buried beneath them like buried treasure. You'll climb in fully dressed, maybe even wearing your coat if the wind howls too loudly through the rafters. You sigh. You add one more piece of coal, just one. You'll regret it tomorrow, but right now it feels like wealth. Because here warmth is currency, and tonight you're just rich enough. The floorboards upstairs groan beneath your feet, old wood flexing under cold that never quite leaves. The hallway is a wind tunnel even with every door shut. You clutch your candle flame trembling in its saucer and walk slow, partly because your limbs are stiff, partly because rushing would only make the cold hit harder when you stop. You reach the narrow attic stairs and climb carefully. There's no insulation, just timber and air and the whisper of snow against slate tiles overhead. Your breath is visible. It curls around your candle like a veil. You push open your bedroom door with a shoulder because the wood has warped and sticks in the frame. Inside it's quiet. Too quiet. No fire, no movement, no warmth. The room is still in that deep way that makes you feel like you're intruding on it, rather than entering it. You can see your breath the way you might in a barn or a shed. The window pane is feathered with frost so thick it looks like etched glass. Your bed weighs a lump of cold blankets that promise very little. The mattress is hard. The sheets are crisp with the kind of chill that bites back. You don't want to touch them. You do anyway. You consider very seriously sleeping in your coat. You've done it before. It helps. Sometimes. If you're a servant and tonight, let's say, this attic room is yours alone. Technically, it's too narrow to stand up straight in and the walls slope inward like they're collapsing slowly. The plaster is cracked. The air tastes like dust and dried candle smoke. There's a single cracked basin in the corner with a thin crust of ice across the surface. You were supposed to wash before bed. You won't. You sit on the edge of the bed and peel off your boots. They resist. The leather has stiffened. Your feet are red, mottled, and wet-socked. You pull them off and hold your toes to the brick you warmed by the fire. It's still warm, just barely. You hold it with both hands and feel something like life come back. You burrow under the covers, still wearing most of your clothes, shirt, stockings, flannel, underskirt. You keep your hat on. You pull the blankets up to your chin and breathe slowly, trying to warm the air around your face before it turns to frost again. There's no fireplace in this room. If you're wealthy, you might have one, or a heating stove, or a maid who lit it an hour before you came up. But not you. You're the maid. You are your own maid. You're also the firelighter, the cook, the laundress, and the early riser. So you lie there still stiff and shivering, and then you remember the chamber pot. It waits under the bed, a ceramic insult to comfort. You don't want to use it, but the thought of walking downstairs to the outhouse barefoot and blind in the dark is a fantasy only the desperate entertain. You reach for it. You balance carefully. You mutter apologies to no one and everyone. You do what needs doing. You slide it back and pretend it isn't there. Historians still debate the dignity of domestic service in Edwardian England. Was it stability or subjugation? A path to independence or a prison of obedience? Most agree it depended on the house and the hands that held the keys. But what's never debated is the cold. No servant's room had proper insulation. The attic was colder than the street. The bedding was thin. The water froze. The drafts cut through the beams like knives. You turn onto your side and try to find the part of the pillow that doesn't feel like stone. Your breath fogs against the wool blanket pulled over your mouth. You tug it tighter. It dampens your lips, but you don't care. You need to trap heat. any heat. You listen. Downstairs the fire has probably died already. The kitchen is dark. The drawing room has gone quiet. The house creaks with the shifting of timber and the weight of frost on the roof. You wonder if the water pipes will freeze again. They did last week. The bath had to be filled by kettle. You nearly burned your hands trying to thaw a bucket. Outside the wind picks up. You hear it whistle under the eaves, catch in the cracks, rattle the loose shutter like a knuckle knocking on the window frame. You close your eyes, and then you wake. It's still dark. Of course it is. But something in your body tells you it's time. You roll out of bed with the grace of a statue being knocked over. Your knees don't work. Your fingers tingle with that awful too stiff to feel pain. You fumble for your boots in the dark. They're cold. They always are. You mutter something impolite. You dress in silence. It's 4:45 a.m. Time to light the fires. Not your fire, theirs. The master's room first, then the drawing room, then the study, the nursery, the kitchen. Each one must be warm before the house wakes, before anyone sees you, before anyone remembers you exist. You carry a bucket of coal in one hand, a bundle of kindling in the other. You tiptoe down the stairs, every step a gamble between quiet and collapse. Your breath is loud in the silence. The grates must be cleaned, the ash scraped, the fire rebuilt from cold bones. You kneel again and again on the hearthstone, coaxing flame from flint, with fingers still raw from yesterday's frostbite. The smoke burns your throat. Your sleeves brush the ash. You stain your apron before breakfast. You stain your fingers before light. No one thanks you. No one ever does. But when the family wakes, their slippers will be warm. Their tea will be hot. Their day will begin in comfort. Because you were there in the dark with the fire fighting the cold like it was personal. And it is. In Edwardian winter, warmth is work. And for the servant class, the work never ends. The street is barely visible under the grey soup of early morning fog, but that doesn't stop the children from trudging toward school. You're one of them today, let's say, about 8 years old, your boots tied with frayed string and your satchel bouncing against your shoulder with every numb-footed step. You'd rather be anywhere else, so would everyone else. The air stings your face the moment you leave the house. Your scarf, hastily wrapped and crusted with yesterday's breath, does little to help. The top of your nose goes cold first. Then your fingers, though they're tucked inside gloves with the fingertips worn thin. There's a hole in the left thumb. There's always a hole in the left thumb. The walk to school isn't far, but it feels like a trek across the tundra. The road is a treacherous mix of packed snow and black ice, a quiet menace that hides beneath innocent-looking powder. You shuffle carefully, but it doesn't matter. Your foot slips and your backside hits the ground with a wet thud. Your satchel lands beside you in a puff of snow. It's not the fall that hurts. It's the dampness soaking through your only good pair of trousers. You stand dignity in tatters and brush off what you can. Behind you, a group of older boys holler and sprint past, throwing snowballs like cannonballs. One hits your shoulder. It's packed with ice. You pretend not to feel it. You keep walking. The school building looms ahead, a grey slab of stone taller than it needs to be, and twice as cold. The windows, tall and grim, do nothing to suggest comfort inside. You reach the steps and join the small crowd of children stamping their feet and blowing into their cupped hands. The bell rings. Too loud, too final. Inside is no better. The classroom smells like wet wool chalk dust and boiled cabbage. Your desk is a wooden plank with an inkwell frozen solid. The surface is slick with condensation. You wipe it with your sleeve, which is already wet from the fall. The teacher enters wrapped in a shawl that does nothing to soften her expression. Her boots thud like judgment on the floorboards. Coats off, she says, though no one really obeys. You leave yours, half on shoulders hunched like you're trying to disappear. The chill in the room has weight. It presses into your ribs and settles in your knees. Your pencil is stiff in your hand. Your fingers don't grip properly. You try to write your name and produce something that looks like a nervous spider scuttled across the page. The girl next to you sneezes into her sleeve. No one reacts. Everyone is sniffling. Everyone is coughing. It's not sickness anymore. It's just background noise. The teacher begins a lesson in arithmetic voice, monotone and sharp. You try to focus, but your toes are staging a protest. Every number feels like a punishment. Your mind drifts to the warmth of your house, not the actual heat, but the idea of it. Of sitting near the stove, hands wrapped around a mug of soup. You blink and realize the chalkboard has changed. You're 3 problems behind. Recess comes, but it's not a relief. You're pushed outside with the others into a frozen yard that might as well be a glacier. The ice sparkles under the weak sun. A few boys slip deliberately, turning falls into sport. You find a spot by the outhouse wall where the wind is less aggressive. You stuff your hands into your coat and wait. Some girls attempt a game of jump rope. The rope is frozen stiff. It flops like a fish. They give up. There's a boy with no hat, no scarf. His ears are purple. He doesn't talk. He just stares at the frost on the fence post, like it might answer something for him. The privy is an outdoor shed that smells like defeat. You hold your breath the whole time. The door doesn't lock. You pray no one notices. Back inside, the desks haven't warmed. The ink is still sluggish. The stove in the corner sputters, giving off just enough heat to melt snow near its feet, but not enough to reach anyone else. You inch your chair forward closer and closer. The teacher sees and snaps her fingers. You slide back again. Historians still argue about how effective Edwardian schooling was during winter. Some claim it built resilience. Others say it built lung infections and trauma. Both are probably true. Lunch is a brief mercy. You open your satchel to find a chunk of bread, maybe a smear of jam if you're lucky, cold tea in a reused bottle. Someone else has a bit of cheese. One boy produces a potato still warm from the morning stove and clutches it like treasure before biting in. You envy him. A teacher wanders by offering slices of something gray and firm from a tin. No one asks what it is. Everyone eats it. The rest of the day drags. Your handwriting worsens. Your posture slips. The teacher corrects you sharply, but your shoulders are too stiff to straighten. The boy behind you coughs non-stop. The girl in front has gone quiet. Her head droops. She might be asleep. Or she might be conserving energy. You understand. Late in the day, the teacher produces a heated brick wrapped in cloth. She sets it on the floor and allows students to come forward one at a time to warm their feet. You count the seconds. You get 20. It's the best moment of the day. Dismissal comes with a bang of the bell. The door opens. A rush of cold air invades the room like a cruel joke. Children burst out, slipping, yelling, laughing, even as they fall. You follow slowly, shoulders hunched, scarf pulled high. The walk home is quieter. Your feet are sore, your legs heavy. The snow is falling again, thick and slow. Street lamps glow like sleepy stars. You pass other children heading in other directions. One has a nosebleed, another is crying. A third throws a snowball at the back of someone's head and runs. You round the corner and see your house. Smoke curls from the chimney. You imagine the fire. You imagine sitting by it, soup in your hands, cat in your lap. You imagine peeling off your wet socks and replacing them with dry ones, maybe even warm ones. You open the door. It's not warm, but it's better than outside. And for one more day, that's enough. Let's say tonight you don't go home, because tonight you don't have a home. You wake beneath an archway or behind a bakery chimney curled beneath a blanket that's more whole than cloth. The stone beneath you radiates cold, the kind of cold that climbs into your bones and starts unpacking. You shift slightly, but every movement feels like it might break something inside you. Your breath fogs against the brick. You breathe shallow so it doesn't stick to your face. You're not alone. You're never alone on the streets. Edwardian homelessness is a crowded, invisible existence. At least a dozen others share your alley, tucked between crates, wrapped in shawls tucked into doorways, sleeping on layers of newspaper that rustle like leaves when the wind sneaks in. A match girl a few feet away is already awake, rubbing her fingers together until she can grip the little bundle of sulfur sticks she'll try to sell today. Her hair is frosted. Her breath curls around her like steam. A dog sniffs at your boots. You don't kick it. It's probably warmer than you. You stretch slowly, Carefully, nothing screams. That's a victory. A newspaper boy runs past shouting headlines about unrest abroad. You don't listen. Your world is local. Your world is whether the bakery will toss out crusts again. Whether the policeman on this corner is the one who lets you be or the one who moves you on. Whether your toes will still be attached tomorrow. You start moving, always. Movement is warmth. You walk, or shuffle, or circle. The longer you sit still, the more the cold settles in like an unwanted guest who talks too much about tuberculosis. You head toward the markets. Not to shop, just to exist. The stalls are setting up thin canvas roofs sagging under snowboxes stacked high with produce that looks tired. Potatoes, turnips, leeks with their roots still dusted in frozen mud. The colors are muted. So is everyone's voice. You hover near the roasted chestnut vendor. He has a brazier lit and it spits sparks like fireflies. You don't beg. You just stand, inhaling the smell, the warmth. Sometimes, if he's in a good mood, he tosses you a broken one. Sometimes he doesn't see you at all. You drift next to the bread stall. Hard loaves, day-old rolls, your stomach growls audibly and you laugh. It's bitter, it helps. A woman eyes you. She clutches her purse closer. You back away. You're not here to frighten anyone. You just want to survive. You pass a lamplighter finishing his morning rounds. You know him. Bertie. He wears ridiculous mittens, pink wool things with long unraveling strings. He says they were his mum's. He hasn't lit a lamp in days, but he still walks the route. It's habit now, ritual, proof of life. Historians still argue about how many people were homeless in Edwardian cities. Census data is spotty. Some say the numbers were small, others say they were invisible by design. Either way, the streets were never empty. Children, dozens of them, move in small packs. They sleep in stairwells under carts in coal cellars if they can sneak in. They stuff their jackets with straw for insulation. They share body heat like currency. They call it penguining. You've done it. It works. Mostly. You find a wall with a bit of sun and settle in. Your back to the stone, your face to the light. It's weak. It's barely there. But it's something. The church opens its doors for morning prayer. Some people slip in not to pray but to sit, just for a bit. The pews are hard but the space is still. It's warmer than the wind. You follow. The priest nods. He knows. He doesn't ask. You sit near the back. You close your eyes not from reverence but from exhaustion. The voice at the front drones. Your thoughts drift. You think about soup. Soup is salvation. The soup depot opens around noon. You queue early. Everyone does. You bring your own container, an old tin dented and scorched but clean. You hold it close. You feel the heat through your gloves when they finally ladle it in. It's thin. Broth mostly. Maybe a bit of carrot. Maybe not. You sip it slowly, reverently. You close your eyes on the steam and pretend. Later you scavenge. Behind the butcher you find a strip of suet in the snow. You wrap it in paper and tuck it into your coat. Behind the fishmonger a piece of cracked ice smells strongly of haddock. You leave it. You nap in the park behind the statue of some man on a horse. The wind doesn't reach there. Not directly. You curl around your satchel. There's nothing in it but a rag and a pair of socks, but you hold it like treasure. When you wake it's late afternoon. The light is fading. The temperature drops fast after dusk. You move again. Always moving. You pass by the public bathhouse. You think about going in. It costs a penny. You don't have one. You keep walking. There's a boiler room you know about behind the printing press. The door is sometimes left unlatched. You try it. Not today. The snow begins again, not a gentle fall, but a sideways whip. You pull your blanket tighter. It's too thin. You duck into a recessed doorway beside a pub. You're not welcome inside, but the stone alcove is deep enough to block the wind. You sit. You curl. You wait. People pass by. Some don't see you. Some do and look away. One drops a coin. You don't move fast enough to catch it before it skitters into the gutter. You sigh. A dog curls beside you. You don't know whose it is. Maybe no one's. It leans against your leg. It's warm, you don't complain. The night deepens. You adjust your scarf over your face. You pull your knees into your chest. You tuck your hands into your sleeves. You rest your head against the wall and think of summer, of grass, of sun, of beds that don't bite back. And you fall asleep like that. Not comfortably, but completely. Because tonight on the streets of Edwardian London there is no comfort, only exhaustion, and the hope that you'll wake up again. It's your lucky night. Because tonight you get a bath. Not the splash your face at the kitchen sink kind, not the wipe your arms with a damp rag variety. No, this is the real thing. A full, honest-to-goodness, soak-until-you-prune, body-submerging bath. But first you've got to earn it. You start by wrapping your soap and towel in a bundle, not a proper bag. Just a length of cloth knotted tight at the top, swung under your arm like a poor man's satchel. The soap is harsh and crumbly. The towel is thin. Neither has been dry since last Thursday. You step outside into the wind. It grabs your coat and tugs hard like it knows where you're going and disapproves. Your boots are still soggy from yesterday. Your fingers ache by the time you reach the first corner. The public bathhouse is 5 streets away, maybe 6. The walk is long, slow, and wet. Snow falls in heavy clumps sticking to your scarf like lint. Every breath stings your nostrils. You clutch your bundle tighter. When you round the last turn, the building appears like a miracle or a mirage. A squat brick box, soot-streaked and windowless. People mill outside, hunched in line, shoulders braced against the cold. You take your place. No one talks. It's too cold for that. You shift from foot to foot, not to stay warm but to keep from freezing solid. After 20 minutes, the door opens. A woman with flushed cheeks and damp hair steps out into the snow towel, clutched under one arm, steam trailing behind her like a ribbon. She looks lighter, softer, like something essential has been returned. You step inside. The warmth hits you like a kiss. Not hot, but warmer. The air smells of soap and old plaster mildew and something metallic. Your lungs expand for the first time all day. You pay your coin, 1 penny hard-earned and not easily spared. The attendant, a man with a pencil behind his ear and sleeves rolled to his elbows, hands you a key. Cubicle 7. You nod and move on. Down the tiled hall doors line both sides. Each bears a number and a small brass hook for your towel. You find yours and step in. The bath is waiting. Porcelain, chipped. The water is steaming gently. You touch it with one cautious finger. Hot. Not scalding, but gloriously, outrageously warm. You strip fast. Clothes fall in a pile damp and sad. Your skin prickles from the sudden exposure. You ease one foot in, then the other. Then you sink slow and reverent, like slipping into a dream. The heat wraps around you, pulling sighs from places you didn't know held tension. Your limbs float. Your spine unlocks. You close your eyes and don't move. Baths like this aren't common. Not for people like you. Most days you wash from a basin cold water cupped in your hands, scrubbed across arms and face with a rag that smells faintly of coal dust. Sometimes you boil water on the stove, enough for your feet and ankles, maybe your knees if you curl tight. But a real bath. This is sacred. The water smells faintly of carbolic, the kind of soap that strips not just dirt but memory. You lather fast body slick with suds that slide away into the steam. You scrub your scalp. You rinse. You breathe. You remember what it feels like to be clean. Your skin turns red from the heat. Not sunburn red, rebirth red, like your blood is circulating again, like your heart remembers how to pump. You soak until your fingers prune, until your ears feel warm on the inside, until your back muscles give up their protest and dissolve into liquid, and then too soon it's over. You hear the knock on the door. The attendant calls 5 minutes. You curse softly. You climb out. The air slaps your wet skin. You towel off fast-working cloth over limbs that already want to crawl back into the water. You dress in damp clothes that feel wrong now. They smell of soot and smoke again. But underneath you are clean, and that's everything. Historians often point to the Edwardian public bath movement as a moment of dignity for the working class. a chance to scrub away the grime of factories, the stink of horses, the exhaustion of poverty. Critics argued it was moralistic, paternalistic, even patronizing, but most who came didn't care. Clean was clean. Some bathhouses even offered soap with little bits of string tied inside so you wouldn't drop it. Others provided rough brushes like the ones used to scrub vegetables. One woman was known to bring an onion and press it under her arm, claiming it drew out bad humors. You don't judge. You walk home slower. The snow has stopped. The sky is pale now, lit by gas lamps and the faint suggestion of moonlight. Your hair is still damp. It curls under your hat. Your skin smells of soap and steam. The cold touches you but doesn't bite. Not yet. Not for a little while. You open your front door and step inside. The air inside is just as cold as before. But it doesn't matter now. You sit by the fire towel draped across your shoulders, steam curling from your sleeves. Someone offers tea. You nod. You sip. Later the chill will return. The layers will come back. The scarf, the gloves, the coal, rationing, the hoarding of heat. But for tonight, you are clean. And in Edwardian winter, that counts as joy. You wake coughing. It's the dry kind, the tickle deep in the throat kind, that doesn't go away with water. The kind that rattles your chest like there's something trying to get out, but never quite makes it. You sit up slowly in bed, already cold, despite the 3 layers of blankets and the scarf you forgot to remove before sleep. Your head aches behind your eyes. Your bones hum. This isn't just tiredness. This is winter illness. Again. You reach for the tin mug beside your bed and find it empty. Even if it weren't, the water would be near freezing by now. You sigh and pull the covers tighter around your shoulders. Illness in the Edwardian era wasn't a rare inconvenience, it was a season. Everyone was sick, or recovering from being sick, or about to be sick. There wasn't much of a gap between. If you had money, you saw a doctor, maybe got a tonic, maybe something stronger. If you didn't, well, you saw your grandmother's remedies instead. You shuffle down to the kitchen in wool socks and a housecoat, your throat wrapped tight in an old flannel. The fire is low. You stoke it with practiced hands, adding the smallest pinch of coal you can justify. It catches slowly, reluctantly, as if it too has caught your cold. The kettle takes ages to boil. You huddle near it, hands curled around the warmth leaking from the iron steam rising gently into your face. When it finally whistles, you pour the hot water over a pinch of dried herbs in a cracked mug, chamomile maybe, or mint if you were lucky last market. You add a spoonful of honey if you have it, onion juice if you are truly desperate. You sip slowly, wincing. Someone suggests mustard plaster. You nod. Someone else suggests goose fat rubbed into your chest. You pretend not to hear. Historians still debate the effectiveness of Edwardian home remedies. Some worked, many didn't. But nearly all were tried because there weren't many options. For every doctor with a stethoscope, there were 100 grandmothers with a theory and a jar of something sharp-smelling under the bed. You sit at the table as the morning light slinks in through the frost-rimmed windows. The cough keeps coming. Dry, relentless. Your eyes water, your ribs complain. You wrap a shawl tighter around yourself and pretend you're fine. Because missing work isn't always an option. The shop won't run itself. The laundry won't fold. The children won't feed themselves, and the master certainly won't light his own fire. So you rise. You rinse your face with cold water and dab a bit of vinegar behind your ears for no reason you remember, except that someone once told you it helped. You pin a sprig of rosemary to your collar, not for fashion, for protection, against illness, against bad air, against whatever this is creeping through your lungs. Out in the streets, it's worse. The wind hits your cheeks like a wet glove. Every breath burns. The baker down the road has a handkerchief over his mouth, his eyes glassy. The milk boy leaves a trail of coughs behind him as he runs. At the corner, someone is selling hand warmers made from old socks filled with sand, heated in a skillet and wrapped in newspaper. You buy one, hold it to your chest like it'll do something. You pass a woman sitting on her stoop with a shawl pulled up to her nose. Her feet are wrapped in rags. She's surrounded by onions, tied around her neck, placed in a basin near her feet. One is sliced in half beside her like a strange offering. She doesn't look at you. You've heard of this. The onion cure. They say it draws out sickness, that it absorbs the bad air like coal absorbs smoke, that if you wake to find the onion brown in the morning, it worked. You believe it a little. Not because it makes sense, but because you want it to. At work, everyone's sniffling. One man sneezes so hard he startles himself. Another leans against the wall. Between customers, sweat on his collar despite the freezing air. You say nothing. No one does. Being sick isn't news, it's the weather. By midday, your fever is real. You feel it behind your eyes in the way your fingertips tremble in the dampness, gathering in the hollows of your elbows. You sip broth at your desk. You tell yourself it's just the cold. A customer compliments your scarf. You say thank you and don't mention it's holding your head on your shoulders. By evening you're swaying. Someone offers a nip of brandy. You accept. It's sharp and hot and burns all the way down. It helps. For 5 minutes. You get home and collapse near the fire. You peel off your boots and sit in your stockings, legs curled under you like a cat. The kettle is still warm. You add a splash of vinegar and honey to the dregs of the tea. You sip again. Someone hands you a compress, soaked in camphor. You press it to your forehead and lean back. You imagine the fever leaving. You imagine waking well. You imagine a world where getting sick doesn't mean falling behind. You think of the oddest things, like the old man who swears by boiled nettles, the woman down the lane who places a knife under her pillow to cut the sickness out, the child who rubs garlic on her palms before sleep. You've tried most of them, because in Edwardian winter medicine wasn't always science. Sometimes it was ritual, sometimes it was hope. And tonight hope is what you have. If you're lucky, and tonight you are, you're not entirely alone in this cold. Because somewhere on the other side of town, someone is thinking about you. Not just fondly, not just with passing warmth, but with quiet, focused tenderness. In Edwardian winter, that's love not grand, not loud, just constant and determined to keep you warm. You open the door to your room and find a folded note tucked into your scarf on the hook. It's small, creased at the corners and written in pencil because ink freezes too easily. The handwriting is familiar, crooked, careful, like someone trying to spell affection without drawing attention. You smile before you even read it, and then you do. It's not poetry. It doesn't need to be. It's a question still cold and a suggestion. Meet me by the lamplight after 6. You press the paper to your lips, then to your heart. That's your answer. Love in the Edwardian era was rarely a private affair. You wrote letters by hand and handed them off in secret. You passed glances at the market. You shared mittens on long walks and argued over who needed the warmer coat more. There were chaperones, of course, and expectations, but winter blurred things. It softened the rules. Historians still debate whether Edwardians were more romantic than we are now. Some point to the love letters, the public courtships, the slow burn of connection. Others argue that necessity more than sentiment shaped affection, because in the cold everyone clung to anyone who'd stay close long enough to share a blanket. At 6, you're standing beneath a lamppost on the corner of Fleet Street, breath curling upwards, scarf pulled to your chin. The gaslight flickers slightly in the wind, casting long shadows behind you. And then footsteps. He appears from the mist cheeks, red nose, running hands tucked into his coat. You recognize the way he walks before you even see his face. You always do. You don't speak right away. Words feel loud out here, and there's no need. He holds out one mittened hand. You take it. Yours is bare. He notices. He frowns. Then without asking, he pulls his left mitten off and hands it to you. Now you're both half warm. That's fair. You walk together in the slow sliding shuffle of winter, past shop windows glowing with gaslight, past carolers rehearsing in the distance, past the fishmonger with his box of cold herring and the man who sells roasted chestnuts and winks when he sees you two together. You share a newspaper-wrapped cone of those chestnuts. You peel them slowly, burning your fingers and not minding. He tries to feed you one, misses your mouth, and laughs like it's the best joke anyone's ever told. You pause near the river. The Thames is a black ribbon, tonight frozen at the edges, steam rising gently where it moves. He wraps his scarf around both of you, pulls you closer, your shoulders knocking your hands, finding each other again beneath the shared cloth. He says something about the stars, how they always look colder in winter. You say something about your toes going numb. He offers to carry you home. You tell him that's daft. He shrugs. You laugh. And just like that, your cheeks warm. When you part, it's with slow reluctance. A kiss on the glove. A brush of his hand against your cheek. You tuck the moment inside yourself like a coal wrapped in velvet. You will burn it for days. Later, alone by your fire, you unwrap a package he slipped into your pocket, a handkerchief stitched with your initials, and a single peppermint lozenge wrapped in tissue paper. You don't need it, but you place it beside your bed like treasure. This is how winter romance survives in mittens shared in tea split 2 ways in the warmth of a letter worn soft from being opened too many times. No ballrooms, no bouquets, just kindness. And the long, slow walk home with someone who matches your pace. Somehow amid the soot and sleet, amid the cracking boots and coughs and coats, Too Thin by Half Christmas still comes. It doesn't arrive in a sleigh. There's no dazzling parade, no television specials, but it shows up anyway in small glimmering ways like light leaking under a closed door. It starts with the smell. Clove-studded oranges, fresh-cut pine, the warm tang of roasted chestnuts, and cider boiled with cinnamon in chipped enamel pots. Even in the poorest streets, someone somewhere has scraped together enough to boil sugar into toffee or warm up leftover pudding. The scent drifts through the alleys and courtyards like a rumor of joy. Then come the greens, holly, and ivy wound around banisters tucked behind pictures hung in doorways. Not elegant, not expensive, just clippings from the churchyard hedge or the alley down the road, but they shimmer with frost and make the smallest corner feel like something sacred. You string paper chains with the neighbor children, your fingers smudged with newsprint and glue. Each loop a tiny triumph. Some are printed with last week's headlines, others with meat prices. You don't care. You hang them across the window with a bit of string, and when the sunlight shines through, the ink glows like stained glass. The post is slower than ever this week. Snow and delays. But somehow cards still arrive. Folded bits of cream paper with stiff handwriting and too many commas. You tack them to the wall. A cousin from York. A school friend you haven't seen in 2 years. A widow who signs simply, with all warmth. You light more candles than usual. You pretend it's tradition, but really it's just because the gas meter ran out yesterday. Still, the flickering makes the room feel alive. Shadows dance on the ceiling, and you don't feel quite so alone. On Christmas Eve, you visit the market. Not to buy, but to wonder. The stalls are decked out with bits of red ribbon. The fishmonger wears a Santa hat made from felt and determination. Children run between carts with noses red and fists full of sugared nuts. You buy a single tangerine and carry it home like treasure. There's no tree in your room, but someone down the lane has put one in the window, a crooked little pine with 4 paper ornaments and a garland made from popcorn and string. You stop to stare for a moment, warmth blooming in your chest like a second fire. You're invited to Christmas dinner. A neighbor, a widow, 4 kids, and a mangy cat who sits on the table like he owns the roast. You bring a loaf of bread and a story. They offer tea meat pie and more laughter than you've heard in a month. The windows fog with breath and gravy steam. You sit close. You pass plates. You forget your cough. They sing carols after slightly out of tune. In the bleak midwinter, hits harder than usual. Someone cries quietly into their teacup. You squeeze their hand beneath the table and say nothing. Historians still argue whether Edwardian Christmases were truly joyful or just a temporary gloss over hardship. Some insist the season was a lifeline, an annual act of resistance against the crushing weight of the year. Others say it was mere distraction. But if you were there, if you'd sat by that coal fire, shared that pie sung with that crowd, you'd know the truth. It mattered, even if only for a day. The church bells ring at midnight. You walk home under their echo, your scarf pulled high, your pockets warm with kindness. Snow begins again, light and slow. You tilt your head back and let it land on your cheeks. You reach your door. The fire inside is low, but not out. A few embers. A red pulse in the ash. You coax it gently. You set your little tangerine on the mantel beside the one card you didn't tack up to my dearest until we meet again. You sit in the candlelight legs tucked under tea in hand and feel something you haven't felt in weeks. Not heat, not hope exactly, but peace. Because for just this one night the cold stays outside, and inside there is light. Spring doesn't arrive in Edwardian England like a parade. There's no trumpet of sunshine, no grand gesture of Thor. It sneaks in shy, slow, quiet as breath in a sleeping room. One morning, the frost on the inside of the window pane is thinner. Not gone, but fragile like lace ready to tear. You press your finger to the glass, and it melts faster than it used to. Outside, a bird sings not a full song, more like a question, and you stop brushing your hair just to listen. Later that day, you notice the mud, thick and wet and everywhere. It's awful to walk through. It sucks at your boots and spatters your hem. But still you smile, because mud means melting. Mud means the ice is losing. The coal scuttle lasts longer now. The fire doesn't have to be fed as often. You catch yourself holding your teacup with bare fingers. Someone opens a window. Only a crack. Just enough to let in the smell of air that doesn't bite. Your body starts to remember what warmth feels like from the outside. The ache in your knuckles lessens. The cough that's lived in your lungs since December loosens its grip. Your skin stops cracking at the corners of your lips. You find yourself sitting in a patch of sun like a cat. You don't even know how long you've been there. You're just still. Just warm. And for the first time in months, your shoulders aren't hunched. The market changes. Stalls begin to display green things, cabbage leeks, onions with honest-to-goodness sprouts. You hold one in your hands and marvel. It smells like the ground, like promise, like something that grows instead of freezes. You pass the bakery and smell lemon instead of lard. There's a new bun in the window, pale and glossy with a smear of jam in the center. You don't buy it, but you think about it. The boots go back on the shelf, not because you don't need them, but because they're finally dry. You don't dread putting them on. You don't have to double up on stockings anymore. One pair will do. You've even washed them in warm water, real warm water. You take longer walks, not for errands, just to be outside. The wind still stings, but only sometimes. You walk to the river and watch the ice peel away from the banks like wax from a letter. The current runs faster now. The ducks are back. The children are louder. You pass a man sweeping his stoop without a coat. A woman hangs sheets out to dry on a line strung between two windows. They flap and snap in the breeze like they've missed the sky. You notice color again. A scarf in blue instead of brown. A ribbon in a child's hair. The tiniest yellow bloom pushing up between the cracks in the cobblestone. It stops you in your tracks. You crouch down and touch it, not believing it's real. It is. Historians still debate the psychological impact of the Edwardian winter on working-class life. Some say the season forged resilience, others say it dulled hope. But everyone agrees spring was more than weather. It was deliverance. You clean your windows, you beat the rugs, you shake out every blanket you swore you'd burn come February. You don't burn them, you fold them, you nod at them like survivors. You take your coat to the line and hang it with dignity. It's earned the rest. The fire still burns, but low now. A companion and not a lifeline. You sit beside it and mend a pair of gloves, humming under your breath. The cat stretches across the floor, and you laugh when she twitches in her sleep. You write a letter. A long one. Not about sickness or coal. About the daffodils you saw blooming near the baker's fence. About the birds on the roof. About how this morning you woke up and didn't see your breath. You walk to the post office, slip the envelope into the box and turn your face to the sky. And for the first time in a very long time you feel it. Not just warmth, but sunlight. Soft, weak, trembling, but there. And suddenly you remember, you made it. You outlived the cold. So that's how they did it. Not through luxury. Not through ease. But through layers of wool, of effort, of quiet endurance. The Edwardians didn't have central heating or waterproof boots or vitamin-enriched anything. They had bricks heated by fire scarves, worn indoor soup made of almosts. They coughed through the morning and worked through the ache. They passed matches, shared mittens, and held fast to tiny comforts, a hot chestnut, a sprig of holly, a bath once a month. They laughed even when their teeth chattered. They fell in love even when their toes froze. They sang carols off-key in gaslit kitchens and told stories with hands red from scrubbing. They stitched blankets from rags and hope. They wrapped their children in old coats and walked them to school through fog and snow and silence. And when the cold finally loosened its grip, they emerged not as heroes but as humans. Quiet, grateful, alive. We live in a different time now. Our winters come with thermostats and microwave soup, but the ache of the season still visits. The loneliness, the longing, the need for light. So the next time the frost crawls across your window, remember them. The Edwardians. The soot-smudged, scarf-bundled, iron-willed survivors who taught us that even the longest winters end. Eventually the ice cracks. The kettle whistles, and spring soft as a breath arrives. You're warm now. Sleep well. Good night.